That night, I opened the business account my son asked me to temporarily guarantee. The red numbers looked like a cut strange transfers. Hidden notes, LVN, retainer hush. He texted Mom, "Trust me." But the next transfer read Mercer Estate under my signature. Someone used my name to borrow drain and was preparing to sell the only thing I had left his father's house. I stayed quiet, gathered proof, and decided to pull the whole family into the light. My name is Lorraine Mercer, and I am 62 years old. For the last 2 decades, I've run harbour and hearth restorations here in Ravenshaw. I'm a carpenter by trade and by heart. I find truth in the grain of old wood and solace in making broken things whole again. My hands are calloused, and my books are clean. It's the only way I've known how to live, especially since my husband passed and I built this company from nothing but his old tools and a second mortgage. So when my son, Dylan, and his wife, Betrayal, came to me 3 weeks ago, their request felt off. They sat in my workshop. Betrayal perched on a stool, careful not to get sawdust on her expensive coat, while Dylan, my 32-year-old boy, paced the floor. They wanted me to co-sign, just as a temporary guarantor, on a new business account for their LLC, North Cove Ventures. It's just a formality. Mum, Dylan insisted, finally meeting my eyes. He had that strained look he gets when Betrayal is watching. We need a guarantor with established credit to lock in the initial contracts. Trust me. Mum, it'll be a few weeks. Tops. Just until the first invoices clear. Betrayal, who is 30, offered a smile that didn't reach her eyes. It's a major opportunity. Lorraine, we can't let it slip by on a technicality. I work with wood. I know when something is warped. But this was Dylan. I said yes. I signed the bank forms, my name linking my stable, hard-earned reputation to their vague new venture. That trust held for exactly 22 days. Last night, at 2:17 in the morning. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Not a call, but a high-priority flag email from Pioneer River Bank. The subject line was stark, irregular overnight transaction alert. My heart did a cold stop. I put on my glasses, my workshop-trained mind already clicking through possibilities, a system glitch, perhaps, or a phishing attempt. But the login portal was secure. I entered my credentials, my fingers stiff, and pulled up the new account for North Cove Ventures. The balance was not what I expected. It was a deep, bleeding red. But it wasn't the deficit that made me stop breathing. It was the transaction log, a series of rapid, high-value transfers, all made within the last 48 hours. The money wasn't going to suppliers or vendors I recognized. The payees were hollow names that sounded like empty boardrooms. LVN Legal, Sable Events, Rook Hill Holdings, each one a 5-figure sum, draining the credit line I had guaranteed. One memo note next to the LVN transfer was just 2 words, retainer hush. My blood turned to ice. Then, I scrolled down and I saw it. The transaction that stopped my world. It was a wire transfer authorization, separate from the others. A massive sum, drawn not just from the business line, but structured as a lien against associated assets. The memo line contained only 2 words, Mercer Estate, and the signature authorizing it, time-stamped and digitally verified by the bank's system, was my own, Lorraine Mercer. I stared at it, the blue light of the laptop illuminating the absolute stillness of the room. I never signed that. I was never sent that document. I had not been near a computer at the time of that signature, It was a forgery, a clean, digital, devastating forgery. My hands, the same hands that can level a warped beam, were suddenly shaking, but not for long. The shock receded, replaced by the cold, methodical calm of my profession. You don't panic when you find dry rot. You assess the damage and find the source. I started taking screenshots. Every transfer, every memo, every cryptic payee. I exported the full statement as a PDF. I went into the bank's security log and saved the IP addresses associated with the transfers. The digital trail was there, fresh and damning. I picked up my phone and called Dylan. The call went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Busy. A minute later, a text message lit up my screen. It wasn't from Dylan. It was from Brielle. The message was 5 words. Do not ruin this deal. It wasn't a request. It was an order. And it was confirmation. They knew. They knew the money was moving. And they knew I would see it. They just hadn't counted on me looking this closely. This soon. I set the phone down. I would not be calling back. I would not be texting Brielle to ask what deal she was talking about. Confrontation was what they expected. It would only give them time to hide, to delete, to lie more skillfully. They had used my name. They had put my legacy, my husband's legacy, the home I built on the line. They thought I was just a simple carpenter. They forgot I was also the woman who ran the books, the woman who knew how to read a balance sheet, and the woman who just became their first and most dangerous auditor. I made a fresh pot of coffee, opened a new spreadsheet, and began my own investigation. The long game had begun. I've built my life on the assumption that you cannot cheat the fundamentals. When my husband Mark died all those years ago, leaving me with a mortgage and a grief that felt bottomless, the extended family, especially the Harts, looked at me like I was a problem to be managed. They expected me to sell, to take the insurance money, and to shrink into a quiet, respectable widowhood. Instead, I picked up Mark's tools. I apprenticed myself to old-timers, learned how to read the stresses in a century-old beam, and taught myself how to run a balance sheet. I built harbour and hearth restorations from the sawdust up. In Ravenshaw circles, I am the stubborn old woman, the eccentric who prefers the smell of wood glue to perfume. They mistake my practicality for simplicity. They forget that to restore old things, you must first have an immaculate eye for structural rot. Brielle's family is the opposite. Her mother, Marla Hart, operates on the belief that appearances are not just the most important thing, they are the only thing. Marla is a curator of surfaces, a woman who hasn't had an honest emotion in public since the 1990s. Brielle was raised to be a showpiece, and she married my son, intending to upgrade him into one too, and Dylan, my boy. He used to be so kind, so open. Now he's just a peacekeeper. He has spent the last 5 years of his marriage walking on eggshells, his only job to keep the peace, which is Hart family code for giving Brielle and Marla whatever they want. He avoids conflict, which means he avoids truth. I had already agreed to their weekly Sunday dinner before I found the forged signature. I didn't cancel. Cancelling would have been a flare, and I am not ready to show my hand. I drove to their new, sterile condo, the one my credit was clearly paying for, with a casserole and a stone-cold knot in my stomach. The air was tense. Brielle was flitting around, showing off a new piece of abstract art that looked like a blue smudge. It's all about elevating the space. Lorraine, she said, her voice tight. We're finally working with some partners who understand our vision. It's lovely, I said, setting my napkin on my lap. We were eating off plates that probably cost $500 apiece. I looked directly at Dylan. Speaking of partners, I was looking over the LLC framework. I was curious about this Rook Hill Holdings group. Are they new investors? Dylan froze, his fork, loaded with asparagus, stopped halfway to his mouth. He looked, for just a second, like a terrified child. Brielle didn't miss a beat. She jumped in, her voice like smooth, polished glass. Oh, Lorraine, you don't need to get bogged down in the administrative side. Rook Hill is just part of the capital structure. It's incredibly complex. High-level finance. It's not like sanding old floors. The insult was deliberate, meant to put me in my place. I let it land. I just watched my son. He said nothing. He didn't defend me. He didn't even look at me. He just put the fork down, his appetite gone. I could see the sheen of sweat on his forehead. He didn't look like a man launching a new venture. He looked like a man trapped in a collapsed building, running out of air. He looked, I realized, like he was dizzy from the sheer pressure of the debt he was in. As the dinner ended, Brielle busily cleared the entryway table. "Before you go," she said, tapping a stack of thick, cream-colored envelopes, "you absolutely must come. Marla is on the committee for the Ravenshaw Future Forum. It's the fundraising event of the season." She handed me the invitation. It was heavy, embossed with gold leaf. I glanced at the list of corporate sponsors, and I stopped, right at the bottom. Under the heading Platinum Benefactors was a small, stylized logo of a bird, a black rook on a hill. It was the emblem for Rook Hill Holdings, and right next to it, the logo for Sable Events, two of the names from the transaction log, the destinations for thousands of dollars of my money. It wasn't a business. It was a network. They were using a high-profile charity gala to move money. It was, I realized with a cold certainty, a washery. A way to take fraudulent loans and wash them clean through donation pledges. I tucked the invitation into my purse. "I wouldn't miss it for the world, dear," I said. I didn't go home. I drove to my workshop, the one place I can think clearly. I sat in my old truck, the heavy invitation feeling like a lead weight in my hand. They were arrogant. They were sloppy. And they thought I was a fool. I pulled out my phone. There was only one number to call. Alistair Pike speaking. Alistair was Mark's accountant. He is 75, wears bow ties, and is the most ruthless man with a ledger I have ever known. "Alistair, it's Lorraine Mercer," I said, my voice steady. "I need an independent audit. And I need it to be completely off the books. I'm looking at a new LLC, North Cove Ventures." I paused, then delivered the final, necessary blow. "And I need you to run a trace on the e-signature protocols at Pioneer River Bank. My name was forged on a lien authorization, and I need to know precisely how they did it." There was no shock in his voice, just the dry calm of a professional. "Send me the account details, Lorraine. I'll start tonight." I hung up. The masks were on tight. But I'd just bought my own ticket to the masquerade. Alistair did not waste time. He called me back at 6 the next morning, his voice crackling with the dry energy of a man who enjoys hunting numbers. "They were clumsy. Lorraine," he said. The signature authorization was routed through a third-party provider, a service called Veridoc. It's a legitimate e-sign platform. But they used an override protocol, triggered by an email you supposedly sent verifying your identity. I had my laptop open, my fingers poised over the keys. What was the email address? Lorraine.merc, 3R. He spelled it out. LORRAINE.MERC3R at a generic webmail address. It was created 48 hours before the signature. The associated account was registered to a prepaid burner phone. A 3 instead of an E. It was the kind of sloppy, insulting trick a teenager thinks is clever. Alistair, I'm sending you the metadata I pulled from the bank's IP log. Can you cross-reference the signature timestamp? Already doing it. He grunted. The Veridoc authorization was timestamped at 2:04 p.m. last Tuesday. My breath hitched. Tuesday. I had been at the workshop pricing a restoration job all afternoon. But Dylan had stopped by the house. He'd texted me saying he needed to pick up some old tax files from my home office. I still had access to the shared family iCloud account we set up years ago, a relic of a happier time, full of photos I rarely looked at. But it had one useful feature: location data. I opened the shared stream. There it was. Tuesday, 2:06 p. A photo taken by Dylan's phone, automatically uploaded. It was a picture of a random document on my desk. The geotag placed him exactly in my home office. 2 minutes after the Veridoc signature was executed, he was there. He, or Betrayal, using his phone. There's more, Lorraine. Alistair continued, pulling me back to the present. This wasn't just a simple e-sign. To authorize a lien of that size, they needed notarization. According to the Veridoc file, the signature was verified by a remote notary from an entity called Blue Lantern Notary. Remote verification, I said. How? They presented a scanned copy of your driver's license. The notary virtually confirmed your identity based on the scan. A scanned ID. My mind raced. Where would they get that I hadn't used a scanner in years? And then it hit me. The home insurance policy. When I refinanced the house 5 years ago, after Mark died, I had to send the broker a clean copy of my ID. Betrayal had helped me organize the digital files for the loan. She said she was just making my life easier. She had access to the entire file. She must have stolen a copy of my identity then, holding it in reserve. The audacity of it. The cold, patient premeditation. Alistair, I said, my voice hardening. I need you to keep digging into Blue Lantern. Right now. I'm going to the bank. I didn't bother calling. I walked into the main branch of Pioneer River Bank at 8:01 a.m. just as the doors opened. I sat down with the branch manager, a man named Peters, and laid out the printed Veridoc email and the forged signature log. My name is Lorraine Mercer, I said, my voice low and steady. I am the guarantor on account 774 North Cove Ventures. I am invoking the unauthorized transaction clause in my guarantor agreement. My signature has been forged to secure a fraudulent lien. I am formally requesting an immediate freeze on all outbound activity from this account, pending a full fraud investigation. Peters, to his credit, turned pale, but acted fast. When a long-term business owner like me uses the word forged in his lobby, they listen. I walked out 30 minutes later with a printed confirmation the account was locked. This was my shield. Now. I could watch for their panic when the payments they'd scheduled began to bounce. My next stop was my workshop office. I drafted a careful, non-public complaint to the Ravenshaw Credit Oversight Committee. I didn't accuse. I just raised concerns about the due diligence of Blue Lantern Notary and the security protocols of Veridoc, citing my case as an example of potential vulnerabilities. I wasn't firing a missile. I was planting a seed. I wanted a paper trail in the system, logged by a regulator, long before this blew up. Finally, I logged back into my own, separate business account, the one they couldn't touch. The account freeze would stop new money from going out, but it wouldn't stop money from coming in. They were desperate for cash. I knew their patterns now. If the well suddenly ran dry, they or their handlers at Rook Hill would scramble. I needed to see where the rats would run. I initiated a transfer. $25,000. I sent it from my account into the compromised, frozen North Cove LLC. It was bait. A nice, round, tempting sum. It was enough to look like a scheduled investment. Now, I would watch. I would watch that $25,000 and see which of those hollow names LVN Legal, Sable Events, or Rook Hill tried to snatch it first. The Ravenshaw Future Forum was not a charity event. It was a trading floor for reputations. Held in the grand ballroom of the city's oldest hotel, it was a sea of expensive tailoring, air kisses, and the sharp, tinkling sound of champagne flutes. I wore my best suit, the one I keep for client funerals and major city contracts. I felt like a block of solid oak in a room full of veneer. My $25,000 bait was sitting in the frozen account, and I was here to see who came to rattle the cage. I got a club soda from the bar and found a position where I could watch the room. It did not take long to find the rot. Marla Hart, Brielle's mother, was holding court by the silent auction, her voice a high-pitched instrument of social climbing. "Oh, yes," she was saying to a city councilman. "Brielle and Dylan are just soaring. They've finally secured backing from Rook Hill Holdings. They are incredibly selective. You know, they only deal with the next generation of innovators." The councilman looked impressed. I just listened, my grip tightening on my glass. Rook Hill Holdings, the name tied to the forged lien on my house, being dropped by Marla like a designer label. This confirmed it. This was not just Dylan and Brielle acting alone. This was a family enterprise. I moved away, scanning the crowd for my son. I found him looking pale and miserable in a tuxedo that was clearly new and too tight. Brielle was at his elbow, her fingers clamped onto his arm. She was steering him toward a man I didn't recognize, tall, with a predatory smile and a suit that probably cost more than my truck. "Gavin, darling," Brielle said, her voice dripping with artificial warmth. "This is my husband. Dylan? Dylan? This is Gavin Locke. He's the one making everything possible for us." I edged closer, pretending to inspect a signed football helmet that was up for auction. I kept my back to them, close enough to hear. "Look, Dylan." Gavin's voice was smooth, like expensive whiskey, but with a cheap, chemical aftertaste. "We're impressed by North Cove. We're ready to provide the real bridge funding. All we need in return is a quiet 30% of the shares. We're silent partners." Dylan mumbled something I couldn't hear. Gavin laughed, a sound that held no humor at all. "Don't worry about the details. That's what I'm for. Just one bit of advice. Keep the old lady, your mother, out of the loop. We find these deals move much smoother when we're working with the decision-makers, not the family baggage. Keep her happy. Keep her in the dark. And everyone gets paid." Family baggage. A cold, precise rage settled in my chest. I was no longer just protecting my home. I was protecting my son from the wolves his wife had invited in. I turned away, my hand steady, and walked to the sponsorship table. I picked up one of the heavy, embossed event brochures. I scanned the sponsor page, and there it was. The same stylized rook logo I'd seen on the invitation. But this time, I noticed the filigree pattern in the border, a very specific, interlocking geometric design. My mind flashed back to the bank statements I had printed out. The wire transfer to Sable Events hadn't just a memo, it had a reference code. And next to it, a small, pixelated symbol I had dismissed as a bank error. It was not an error. It was this exact pattern. My hand went to the small clutch I'd brought. I pulled out my phone. This was a public event, a ballroom with hundreds of people. I angled the phone, opened the camera, and took a clear, high-resolution photo of the brochure and the logo. Then, I activated the voice memo app. I let it run, just recording the ambient noise, sliding the phone back into my clutch, leaving it slightly open and pointed toward the crowd. If Gavin and his partners were going to talk business here, I was going to let them. I was making my way toward the exit when a woman stepped in front of me. She was younger, with sharp, intelligent eyes and an energy that did not match the room's lazy entitlement. Mrs. Mercer Lorraine Mercer. I nodded, wary. My name is Maya Penn. I'm with the Ravenshaw Gazette. She lowered her voice. You run Harbour and Hearth. Right. You're one of the few legacy business owners here tonight. I saw you watching the Rook Hill contingent. I'm investigating rumours about dark bridge funds in the city. Does that term mean anything to you? Her eyes were searching. She was fishing. She knew something, but didn't have the proof. I gave her my best confused old carpenter look. Dark funds. Goodness. I just restore old houses. I'm afraid that sounds a bit out of my league. Ms. Penn? Her face fell slightly, disappointed. But, I added, as if an idea just struck me. You mentioned Rook Hill Holdings. I'm always curious about the new players in town, especially if they're investing in Ravenshaw. Is there any public information on them? Incorporation papers? Perhaps. It was a trade. She saw it. I can't share my sources, Mrs. Mercer, she said. But I can email you the public filings. She scribbled on her pad. Just know that the last time I saw a setup like this, it was a real estate pump and dump scheme in the suburbs. A lot of small investors got wiped out. Thank you, Ms. Penn. I turned to leave, and my eyes met Dylan's across the room. He was standing alone for a moment, and he looked terrified. Brielle was a few feet away, watching me. She had seen me talking to the reporter. Her face, usually a mask of polite indifference, contorted for just a second. It was pure venom. She grabbed Dylan's arm, hard. I was too far away to hear, but I could read her lips. She was looking right at me. Don't let her ruin this. I walked out of the ballroom, the sound of the string quartet fading behind me. I had the recording, I had the photo, and I had a reporter digging in the same place I was. Ruin it, oh. Brielle. I was not there to ruin the deal. I was there to find the chisel I would use to take it apart, piece by piece. I let the bank account freeze sit for a full day. I let my $25,000 bait sit untouched. The silence from their end was louder than any alarm. They hadn't tried to move the money, which meant they knew the account was locked. They were panicking. Good. I texted Dylan a simple message. I'm making your father's beef stew tonight. 6 o'clock. Come alone. He came. He walked into my old kitchen, the one he grew up in, looking like a ghost. He sat down at the familiar oak table, the one I had refinished the year he was born, and stared at the wood grain as if it were a lifeline. I placed a bowl in front of him and sat down opposite, not with my own dinner, but with a single piece of paper. I slid the printed bank statement across the table. He didn't touch his spoon. He just stared at the red numbers, the list of transfers to Rook Hill and Sable events. It's just temporary, he stammered, his voice thin. It's bridge financing. Mum, Con. I just borrowed it. We're going to pay it all back. Gavin said it's standard. Gavin? I said, my voice flat. I tapped my finger on the largest transaction, the one for the Mercer estate. I tapped the spot beside the digital authorization. Who taught you to sign my name? Dylan. I did not yell. I did not cry. I asked the question as calmly as if I were asking him to pass the salt. It was the coldness that broke him. His face crumpled. The 32-year-old man disappeared, and suddenly my son was a terrified boy, his shoulders shaking. I didn't, he whispered, tears welling. I didn't. Brielle. She said it was just a formality. She said she had it handled. Handled what? Everything. He finally burst, his voice cracking. The deposit on the new house. Brielle had to have the one in the Heights, the one her mother approved of. And the renovations. She said we had to present a certain face to our partners. And I lost some money. Mum, I made a bad investment. A small one. And I was trying to make it back before Marla. He couldn't even finish. He was drowning in their expectations, in their world of surfaces. Right on cue. His phone buzzed on the table. The screen lit up Brielle. FaceTime. Dylan winced and hit ignore. It rang again, immediately. You'd better answer it, I said. She's clearly in charge. He fumbled, his thumb accepting the call. Brielle's perfect, angry face filled the screen. She wasn't at home. She was in her car, the light harsh. Dylan? What is going on? Gavin's been calling me. The accounts are frozen. Did you... She saw me, sitting opposite him. Her eyes narrowed. Lorraine, what are you doing? I'm feeding my son, Brielle. You need to stop this, she snapped, her voice losing its polite veneer. Stop embarrassing him. Whatever you think you're doing, you need to call the bank and unfreeze that account. This deal is saving our future. I looked at her, then at the broken man at my table. I reached over, took the phone from his hand, and ended the call. I put the phone on the counter, far away. Dylan was staring at his hands, ashamed. I didn't go to him. I didn't hug him. Not yet. What future? Dylan? I asked, my voice still quiet. The one you build by stealing your mother's house. The one where your wife forges my name and you're too scared to stop her. I didn't know she signed, he whispered. I swear. It doesn't matter, I said. You let it happen. Now. Show me. Show me the terms. Show me the contract you signed with Gavin Locke. He looked confused. Contract. The agreement, the partnership details, the interest rates, the repayment schedule, the document that says what he gets for this bridge funding, and what happens if you default. His eyes were blank. There's no formal contract yet. It's just emails. Gavin said he'd have his people paper it once the first round funding was secured. My blood ran cold. My son had handed our entire legacy over to a shark based on vague emails, all to please a woman who despised his origins. "He's not your partner." "Dylan?" I said, the last bit of softness leaving my voice. "He's your predator, and he's using you to get to me." I went to my laptop on the counter. My $25,000 transfer. The bait. It's still there. If the account is frozen, they can't touch it. But you can. I turned the laptop to face him. "You still have access. The freeze is on outbound wires, not internal transfers. Send it back." "What?" "Send it back to me. Right now. I want to see how fast the shark surfaces when he sees his dinner swimming away." He looked at the screen, then at me. "Mum, if I do that, Gavin, Brielle, they will be furious." "Good," I said. "Be more afraid of me." His hand was shaking so badly he could barely use the mouse. He clicked, he typed, his breathing shallow. He hit confirm. We both watched the screen as the status changed. Pending transfer. Then complete. It was done. The money was out. I closed the laptop. "Now," I said. "We wait." It did not take 10 minutes. Dylan and I were still sitting at the oak table, the stew untouched, when his phone began to vibrate violently on the counter. It wasn't a ring. It was a furious, insistent buzz. He looked at it, his face ashen. "It's Gavin," he whispered. "Answer it. Put it on speaker," I commanded. He fumbled for the phone, his thumb shaking as he accepted the call and tapped the speaker icon. "What the hell did you do?" Gavin Locke's voice, no longer smooth whiskey but raw, cheap alcohol, flooded my kitchen. "Who told you to move that money? Who told you to reverse the transfer?" It was a mistake," Dylan stammered. "A mistake. That was a scheduled draw. You idiot. Our sponsors are furious. You just flagged the entire account. You fix this. You call your bank. You tell them it was an error. And you get that account unfrozen. Or this whole thing goes sideways. Am I clear?" "Gavin, Am I clear?" Gavin roared. The line went dead. Dylan looked like he was going to be sick, before he could even speak. The side door of my workshop, which connects to the kitchen, slammed open. Brielle stood there, drenched from the rain, her face a mask of pale fury. She must have driven straight from her car to my shop, bypassing the house entirely. "He's right," she hissed, advancing on Dylan. "You fix this. Do you have any idea what you've done? You're ruining everything." "Brielle," I said, my voice cutting through her panic. "Get out of my shop." She turned on me, her eyes wild. You did this. You're poisoning him. You don't understand. Lorraine, these people are not your small-town woodworking clients. You just blew up a multi-million-dollar deal." "A deal," I repeated. "That was built on my forged signature." "So what?" she shrieked. "It was just a piece of paper, a formality. But now you've made them angry. Now they're going to use what they have." "What do they have?" "Brielle," I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. She was too far gone in her anger to stop. "LVN Legal. You saw the name, didn't you? You think that was for North Cove? That's their leverage. They have evidence. Lorraine damaging evidence about Dylan. Things he did. You think they'll just walk away? They'll ruin him. They'll ruin us." There it was. The final, filthy piece. I looked at the bank statement still on the table, at the line item for LVN Legal. The memo retainer hush. It wasn't a fee. It was blackmail. My son was being actively extorted. Brielle's face changed. She realized what she had said. The panic in her eyes was replaced by a new, colder fear. She had just confessed. I stood up. Brielle, leave. Now. She backed away, one hand over her mouth, and fled, slamming the door behind her. The room was silent. Dylan was just a shell. I picked up my phone and called Alistair. She confirmed it. Alistair? They're extorting him. I need a lawyer. Not a family lawyer. A shark. I know one, he said. She specializes in corporate fraud. I'll have her send a litigation hold notice, a do not destroy letter to Gavin Locke's office tonight. He'll get it by 8 a. It will officially inform him that all his records, emails, and data are now part of a pending legal action. It will stop him from deleting anything. As I hung up, my other phone, my bank contact line, buzzed. It was Peters, the bank manager. Mrs. Mercer. I thought you should know. The account freeze you placed worked, just 5 minutes ago. An automated transfer was attempted from the North Cove account. It was blocked. Of course. But the originating IP address, it wasn't a known entity. It was routed through a server tied directly to Rook Hill Holdings. The bait. They had seen the $25,000 come in, and as soon as Gavin realized Dylan was non-compliant, he had tried to pull the money out himself. He had taken a direct, illegal action. He had just put his own hand into the trap. My personal email pinged. It was from Maya Penn, the reporter. The subject line public filings, as requested. I opened the attached documents. It was a dense spiderweb of corporate ownership. But Alistair had taught me how to read these. It took me less than 5 minutes to find the thread. Rook Hill Holdings was owned by a shell company, which was in turn owned by another shell company whose primary officer was listed as the sole proprietor of Sable Events. They weren't partners. They were the same person. It was a closed loop, designed to wash money from fraudulent loans, like the one on my house, through high-profile charity events, making it clean on the other side. I spent the next hour compiling everything. The forged signature, the IP logs, the public filings from Maya, the bank manager's report of the blocked transfer, the blackmail confession from Brielle, which I had written down verbatim. I put it all in a single, password-protected file. I did not send it to the police. I sent it to a secure, anonymous tip line for the Ravenshaw Financial Inspector's office. I requested no contact. I just gave them the map and the key. I trusted the regulators to be slow, methodical, and ruthless. My part was almost done. Now, I just had to set the stage. I walked over to my drafting table, pulled out a sheet of my company's best, thickest cardstock, and began to write. It was an invitation, a celebration for the 10-year anniversary of Harbour and Hearth restorations, a small, intimate gathering at the Seaview Room. I invited Dylan and Brielle. I invited Marla Hart. And I sent a special, personal invitation to Mr. Gavin Locke, thanking him for his investment in the community. It was not a party. It was a closed-door deposition, and everyone was about to testify. The Seaview Room is not grand, but it is private. It's a boxy, neutral space in a downtown hotel, the kind used for corporate arbitrations and shareholder squabbles. It smells of industrial carpet cleaner and stale coffee. I rented it for 3 hours. I arrived early to set up. There was no party decor, no balloons for Harbour and Hearth's 10th anniversary. There was only a long, polished table. At its head, a projector screen, which I had split into 3 distinct inputs, one for the bank records, one for the notary files, one for the emails. They arrived separately, which I had expected. Dylan came first, looking like he was walking to his own execution. He sat down, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. Brielle and Marla arrived together, a united front of expensive perfume and sharp, anxious glances. "Lorraine, this is all a bit drab for an anniversary, isn't it?" Marla said, her eyes sweeping the room with distaste. "It's a working meeting." "Marla," I said. "Please, sit." Gavin Locke was the last. He sauntered in, all confidence and $1,000 cologne, clearly expecting to intimidate the old lady. He saw the setup, and his smile faltered for just a beat. "Quite the presentation. Lorraine, am I billing you for my time?" "Not at all," I said. "I've also invited another investor who is very interested in your operation. He should be here any moment." On cue, the door opened, and a quiet man in a nondescript suit walked in. "Mr. Evans," I said, shaking his hand. "Thank you for coming." Mr. Evans was, of course, the financial inspector I had been corresponding with. He was here as an anonymous sponsor, an observer. His presence changed the air in the room. Gavin Locke's smile vanished completely. I took my place at the head of the table. I clicked the first slide. "Good evening," I said, my voice calm and clear in the small room. "Thank you all for coming. We are not here to celebrate. Tonight, no one screams, no one accuses. We just look at the data." I aimed the remote. The left screen lit up. "Input 1 Pioneer Riverbank." I showed the log. The account freeze. The attempted transfer from the Rook Hill IP address, time-stamped 5 minutes after my call with Dylan. Gavin shifted in his chair. "Bank errors," he said, waving a hand. "Happens all the time." "Then let's look at input 2, I said, clicking again. "The notarization." The center screen lit up. "This is the metadata from the Veridoc e-signature. Alistair was kind enough to get a court order for it." A timeline appeared. The signature was executed at 2:04 p.m. It was linked to a burner SIM card, purchased for cash. And this... I clicked, and a grainy, dark image filled the screen. "This is the webcam identity verification file from the Blue Lantern Notary. You could not see a face. It was just a shadow, a dark shape. But you could see the hand, a woman's hand, with distinctive, long nails, just like Brielle's holding up my driver's license to the camera." Brielle let out a small, strangled gasp. Dylan wouldn't look at her. "And finally," I said, "input 3, the money." The right screen populated with copies of invoices. "These are the invoices from Sable Events, billing the Ravenshaw Future Forum for event direction and administrative services. And these are the corresponding wire transfers from Sable Events account, moving 90% of those funds directly to Rook Hill Holdings. The transfers were made the same day the charity's money came in." "That's just cash flow," Gavin said, his voice too loud. "It's smart management. The inspector's office calls it washing," Mr. Evans said, his first time speaking. His voice was quiet, but it landed like a hammer. Gavin's face went purple. Marla finally spoke up, her voice trembling but defiant. "This is a family matter. Mr. Evans, Lorraine, I don't know what you think you're doing, but you are embarrassing your son. Whatever arrangements were made, They were made for the good of this family, for the Hart family honor. Honor? I repeated. I clicked to the next slide, filling all 3 screens with a single image. It was an email from Gavin to Brielle, with Dylan copied. I blew up the text, so it was impossible to miss. It was dated from the week before the signature was forged. It read, "The old lady is the only one with the credit. Stop messing around. We need Mum's name to expedite the lien. Just get it done." A dead, heavy silence filled the room. Gavin was staring at the screen, his mask finally gone. Brielle was crying, silent tears running down her face. Marla looked like she had swallowed glass. I turned off the projector. The room plunged into a dim, quiet twilight, lit only by the emergency exit signs. I looked at my son. He was staring at the blank screen, his face unreadable. "Dylan," I said. My voice was not angry. It was just tired. "I am done. Do you want to speak? Or should I finish this?" Dylan pushed his chair back, the sound scraping loudly in the quiet room. He stood up, but he didn't look at me. He looked at Gavin Locke. "You're right. Mum," he said, his voice hoarse. I'm afraid." He turned to Mr. Evans. "It wasn't just pressure. It was blackmail. That night at the forum, after the party, Gavin's partners took me for drinks. He was shaking. I drank too much. They set me up. They took pictures, compromising photos. The next day, LVN Legal sent me an email, the Hush retainer. They said if I didn't cooperate, if I didn't get them the access they needed Mum's credit, they would send those pictures to Brielle, and to Marla, and to my firm. Brielle suddenly let out a strangled sob, a raw, ugly sound that had nothing to do with performance. "I just wanted the house," she cried, looking at her mother, at Marla. "I just wanted it to be perfect before you came. You said the Mercer house was dated. You said we needed to show we were heart level. I was just trying to make it good enough." I looked at my daughter-in-law, not with pity, but with a cold clarity. "So you put a lien on my house, to decorate yours?" I didn't raise my voice. "Look at you, Brielle. Look at all of you. Every choice you made to protect your appearance, to keep up with the heart level, has become a chain. You aren't just in debt. You're owned. You chained my son to blackmailers, and you chained yourself right alongside him." Gavin Locke suddenly barked out a laugh. It was a jarring, ugly sound. He leaned back in his chair, spreading his hands. "My God, what a soap opera," he sneered. "You think this is news? This isn't extortion. Lorraine, this is the art of leverage. It's just business. Dylan was a risk. I mitigated it. You're a roadblock. I'm offering to pave you over." He leaned forward, his eyes glittering. "But I'm a reasonable man. This is a mess. A public, regulatory mess. You've made a big mistake inviting this government clerk." He nodded at Evans. "But I can fix it? For a price. We dissolve North Cove. We make the regulators happy. And I walk away and take all this evidence with me. All it will cost you is a 20% stake in Harbour and Hearth, a small finder's fee for making this all go away." He was trying to leverage me. He was trying to use the very evidence of his crime as a bargaining chip. "That's a fascinating offer, Mr. Locke," I said. The back door of the conference room opened. Mr. Evans, the anonymous sponsor, stood up. He hadn't been sitting at the table. He had been standing by the wall, near the door. He stepped forward into the light. "Mr. Locke," Evans said, his voice suddenly carrying the full weight of his office. "My name is Thomas Evans. I am a senior investigator with the Ravenshaw Financial Inspector's Office. I must inform you that this meeting is being recorded as part of an active investigation. Under state statute, I am formally instructing you to preserve all data, digital and physical, related to North Cove Ventures, Rook Hill Holdings, and Sable Events. Any attempt to delete, alter, or transfer said data will be considered obstruction and tampering with evidence." Marla Hart stood up so fast, her chair almost fell over. "Absolutely not. I will not be. I am leaving. This is slander." She made it 2 steps toward the door before I spoke. "Sit down. Marla." She froze. "I invited you to see the whole picture," I said. "You're not leaving before the final slide." I picked up the remote and hit the last button. The screen lit up again. It wasn't an email this time. It was a graph. A simple, brutal pie chart. "This is the data Mr. Evans's office pulled from the public filings of the last 3 charity events run by Sable Events," I said. "As you can see, for every dollar donated, exactly 78 cents was consumed by administrative and event management fees. Fees which, as we know, were paid directly to Rook Hill Holdings." I looked at every face in the room, at Marla's shock, at Brielle's empty stare, at Gavin's mask of fury. This was never an investment. "Gavin," I concluded, my voice ringing in the dead quiet room. "This was a shakedown. It was extortion, plain and simple, using charity as a filter and my name as a shield. You weren't building a business. You were just finding a new way to steal." I turned to my son. He was no longer looking at the screen. He was looking at me, his eyes clear for the first time in years. The fear was gone, replaced by a slow-burning, righteous anger. He turned, not to his wife, not to his mother-in-law, but directly to Gavin Locke. "The game is over," Dylan said. Gavin's sneer froze on his face. Dylan's words hung in the air, a final, unchangeable declaration. Mr. Evans, the inspector, took that as his cue. He stepped forward and placed a slim folder on the polished table. He opened it, revealing several pre-printed documents. "Given your son's statement of coercion," Evans said, his voice directed at me but loud enough for the room, "and his apparent willingness to cooperate, my office has prepared a limited immunity agreement. This is a one-time offer. Mr. Mercer." He slid the top document over to Dylan. "You turn over everything," I said, my voice cutting in, clarifying the terms. "Every email, every text, your laptop, your phone. Right now. You give Mr. Evans a full, sworn affidavit detailing everything from the first day Gavin Locke contacted you. You cooperate fully with their prosecution." I pointed to the signature line. "You do that, and the inspector's office agrees not to pursue charges against you for your complicity in the initial fraud." I then slid a second document from my own folder, one my lawyer had drafted. "And this is for me. You sign this, revoking any and all power of attorney, any signatory rights, or any authorizations you have ever held related to my estate or my company, effective immediately, and you will sign a legally binding repayment plan for every single dollar you and your wife siphoned from my accounts. You will pay it back, with interest." Dylan's hand was shaking, but he pulled the papers toward him. "What about me?" Brielle's voice was a thin whisper. I turned to her. I had a document for her as well. You, I said, will sign this. It's a civil agreement. It states that you will immediately and publicly separate yourself from any and all entities related to Rookhill, Sable Events, or Gavin Locke. You will have no further contact. You will also— I paused, letting the weight of the next words land. You will attend a minimum of 6 months of therapeutic counseling for financial compulsions. My lawyer will be provided with confirmation of your attendance. Non-negotiable. You can't— Marla started. And you, Marla, I said, turning on her. Mr. Evans, on cue, produced another file. It was a printout of text messages Marla pressing Brielle, demanding that she secure the Hart family's business relationship with Rookhill. Your constant pressure to ensure the business borders on conspiracy? Mrs. Hart. Evans said mildly. You will be hearing from our office regarding a full civil investigation into your financial dealings with Mr. Locke's network. Marla sank back into her chair, her face the colour of ash. As for you, Mr. Locke, Evans said, turning to him with an almost pleasant expression. The back door opened, and 2 uniformed Ravenshaw police officers stepped inside, along with a woman in a suit. This is Detective Alvarez. She has a temporary warrant for the immediate seizure of all electronic devices on your person and in your office, pending the investigation into wire fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering. Gavin Locke looked from the officers to me. The hatred in his eyes was pure. You old. One more thing, I said, cutting him off. I took out my phone and held it up. While we've been sitting here, I've been on the line with my bank's fraud department. Using the evidence presented tonight, I have requested an emergency High Court order to freeze all assets, personal and corporate, of Gavin Locke, Rookhill Holdings, and Sable Events, as they are demonstrably linked to the fraudulent encumbrance of my property. Gavin's face went white. The warrant was bad, but the asset freeze that was the kill shot. That meant he couldn't even pay his lawyers. Detective Alvarez stepped forward. Mr. Locke, your phone and laptop, now. While the officers dealt with a suddenly very quiet Gavin, I pushed a pen toward my son. Dylan picked it up. His hand was trembling so violently I thought he would drop it. He looked at the signature line, then at Brielle, then at Marla. He took a deep, ragged breath. He looked at me, his eyes full of a terrible, broken clarity. No more keeping the peace, he whispered. He signed the immunity agreement. He signed the revocation of his rights. He signed the repayment plan. He pushed the stack of papers back toward me. The room was utterly silent, save for the click of Gavin Locke's briefcase being opened by the detective. Brielle, deathly pale, turned her face from her mother to her husband, to the ruins of their life, and then to me. And us, she asked, her voice cracking. What about us? I looked at her. I looked at my son, who had just signed away the last vestiges of his deceitful life to save his future. That, I said, gathering my papers, is up to the 2 of you, but I suggest you start with honesty. It will be new for you. The entire room seemed to be holding its breath. The decision had been made. The consequences were just beginning. The following morning, we weren't in a dark conference room. We were at the Riverlight Escrow office, a place designed to finalize deals, not dismantle them. The air was sterile, smelling of coffee and printer ink. My lawyer, Alistair's shark, was present, along with a pale, silent Brielle and a subdued Dylan. Marla was there too, sitting stiffly in the corner, her presence unauthorized but tolerated. The escrow agent, a nervous woman, deferred to my lawyer. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Hayes, placed a single document on the table. Pursuant to the findings of the Ravenshaw Inspector's Office and the evidence of digital forgery provided by Veridoc, the unauthorized lien against the Mercer estate, also known as Seabright House, is declared null and void. The forged signature has been invalidated. The property is clear. I let out a breath I had been holding for days. Seabright House. My husband's house. It was safe. Through the glass wall of the conference room, we saw movement in the main hallway. It was Gavin Locke, flanked not by lawyers, but by the two uniformed officers from last night. He was in handcuffs. Detective Alvarez was there, serving him with a new warrant, this one. I was told, related to the broader event money laundering scheme. His reign in Ravenshaw was over. Marla, seeing this, made one last, desperate move. She stood up, her voice regaining its old entitlement. "This is a travesty. That man was a pillar of the—" I didn't even turn to face her. I just pointed to the glass partition, where her daughter, Brielle, was sitting. "Look at her. Marla." Marla stopped, confused. "Look at your daughter. She is shaking," I said, my voice low and final. "Learn to stop stepping on her. You've broken enough." Marla's face collapsed. She stared at Brielle, finally seeing the wreckage, not the showpiece. She sat down, defeated. The room was silent. Brielle, who had been staring at her hands, slowly turned to Dylan. Her eyes were red, but her face was set. There were no tears, no pleas for forgiveness. I will take responsibility for my part in this. Dylan, she said, her voice quiet but steady. No more blaming, no more excuses. It was not an apology, and it was not enough. But it was the first true thing I had ever heard her say. Dylan did not respond to her. Not yet. He stood up, walked over to me, and reached into his pocket. He placed a small plastic bank card, a security key, in my hand. "The LLC account is dissolved," he said. This is the key to my personal accounts, my passwords. From now on, every account I have is transparent to you. Mom, no more hiding." I looked at the card, then at him. I pulled out my phone. I did not need his key. I opened my own banking app and navigated to the North Cove Ventures account, the one I had guaranteed. It was no longer a field of red. The balance had been reset. The fraudulent lien was gone. And there, near the top, was the $25,000 transfer I had made as bait. It had been returned, and the line item glowed green transaction reversal. I closed the app. I realized, suddenly, that my hand was no longer shaking. The tremor that had lived with me since the night I saw the red numbers was gone. I looked up from the phone and met my son's eyes. He looked broken, but he also looked free. "This time," I said, "I trust you." The lawyer, Hayes, finished closing her briefcase. "The paperwork is filed. Mrs. Mercer, you're clear." The escrow agent opened the heavy glass door. Bright sunlight from the main lobby flooded the sterile room. I stood up. I picked up my folder, the one containing the copies of the fraud, the lies, the blackmail, and I closed it. I walked out of that office. I did not look at Dylan. I did not look at Brielle or Marla. I walked straight into the light, my file secure under my arm. I did not look back. The battle was over. Thanks so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where in the world you are listening from, so please leave a comment and share your thoughts. Be sure to subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting the hype button so more people can hear this story.